today's topic is going to be around relocation in the context of a co-parenting relationship through family law in Australia. I am going to apologise in advance. I have my dog in the office with me. If she starts wandering around, she's going to look super drunk. She has a slip disc. It's as good as it can get, and she's on pain relief. Don't worry, I'm not a negligent owner. You don't need to report me, and you don't need to let me know that my dog is broken. I know. So, basically, what I want to touch on today is what constitutes a relocation, how the courts look at it, and how you could go about resolving any potential relocation issues with your co parent. So, first and foremost, what is a relocation? A relocation is usually going to involve the primary parent or primary caregiver of the children moving out of their current area. So that could be a few hours away, it could be interstate, it could be international. And obviously through the lens of COVID at the moment, any kind of decision making around relocations, particularly interstate and internationally, are imperative, and you've got to get them right because they could be extremely impactful to the family as a whole. It's probably going to happen even without COVID. So they are really big discussions that you need to have with the other parent. And when we're looking at them, there's going to be different reasons behind them. There are cases where it's going to be for the children, and I've seen it where, particularly where children might be highly talented athletes, I was going to say sports players. Clearly, I am not one of them. So they could be really talented athletes, and it might be because they play basketball or tennis or rugby, and it's not just beneficial but almost critical to their potential future professional career that they relocate to a particular school where they can have that progressed, and where they can be linked with the kind of teams that they could potentially be playing for and moving into the future, etc., etc. It happens, and I've seen that, and usually the parents agree on those ones because they really want their kids to succeed, which is good. But the ones that tend to have issues are where it's because the parent wants to move. They're also the more common ones. And sometimes parents want to move and sometimes parents need to move. And that's going to come into play when you're having the discussion or when you're potentially in court, if it ever got to that point. And reasons could be financial, they could be family, they could be health, job opportunities. There's a multitude of reasons why. So that's sort of what relocation might entail in a nutshell. It's the children moving. If the other parent wants to move away, that's potentially an issue as well, but it's not what I'm covering, and it's not the relocation we're talking about. It's relocation of the children with their primary carer. So how do courts view this? At the end of the day, the child's best interests are still going to be the paramount consideration. So they're still going to look at all the same factors that they would in any other parenting issue to ensure that the children's best interests are at heart of the decision. So I guess one of the really good examples of when it may not be in the child's best interest, and again, it's a situation I've seen come up. It's a situation where I've seen recovery orders succeed, and it's where mum, who has been the primary caregiver, has met someone online and decided to move the children 7 hours away from the co-parent to be with the person they've been talking to online. And that has been a reason in which the court has made interim orders that the children return to where they were living, because the decision that had been made by that parent had not considered fully the best interests of the children. That's probably an easy example to use. Most of them probably are a lot more complicated than that. So when the court is looking at it, they're not simply taking into account just what the children need, although it's the paramount consideration. They need to know why the parents want or need to move, or the parent wants to need or move, wants or needs to move. I'll get it right eventually. And that need could be sufficient to justify it being in the best interest of the kids alone. And one of those needs could be financial, that they cannot afford to continue living where they are living. straight up. They can't afford the rent, they can't afford to buy there, they can't afford the cost of living in the area, and they've had to move away to where they can afford to. And there's obviously going to be other factors coming into play as to why they can only afford to be in a certain place. But that's evidence that can go towards the court saying that it's in the best interest of the children to be cared for by a parent who is financially self-sufficient. They can provide for the children in that way. Another factor that could come into play would be that the parent is physically or mentally unwell and they need to be in a certain place, either because they need to be more closely located to somewhere for treatment, or because they need support around them, and that could be support for their own mental health and also for caring for the children. And that could be for physical or mental illness, because they might need someone to care for children while they're being treated for a physical or mental illness. So there could be those reasons that come into play, and it's quite clear that there is a link there to support how that benefits the children, because a child benefits from having a happy and healthy parent who is able to care for them and support them emotionally, mentally, physically, developmentally, all of those things. A case that I mentioned earlier this week on social media was Hepburn and Noble from 2010, and that was a case in which the unhappiness of the parent being prevented from relocating was considered to have a detrimental impact on the child. So the court was still linking it back to how it impacted the child. So on the face of it, you were just looking at it going, oh, that's an unhappy parent. But it wasn't as simple as that, because that unhappy parent was potentially impacting their child by not just being unhappy, but that unhappiness may have made them less productive, less able to work and earn an income, less able to do the things that they needed to do to best be there for their child. In other circumstances, so another matter was You and You, the letter U, back in 2002. And in that case, they held that one parent's ambitions and wishes should not be subordinate to those of the other. And the children's best interests remained paramount and not subject to the wishes of the parents, let alone one parent. So a good example of this one may be that one parent, and I've seen a really good example of this recently, pretty much equal shared care. I think the mother had slightly higher care of the children. It was very, very similar, but the mother was developing her own business in the local area, and the father had repartnered, and that partner was being given a work opportunity interstate, quite far away. And the father was proposing to the mother that the kids move with him and the new partner, because they could have this great life far away from mum, because the partner and he could earn lots more money and there was all this opportunity. So they were his ambitions and wishes, but the mother's ambitions and wishes shouldn't be subordinate to dad's, and they had equal care or thereabouts of the children. So the children weren't going to lose anything by remaining where they were necessarily, but they were going to lose their mum if they moved away. So this one hasn't been to court that I'm aware of. It's just a matter that I'm aware of the facts, and I would take from what I have seen of the court's decisions that they would consider that the dad's ambitions and views and wants didn't supersede mum's, and that there wasn't enough there to justify that the children relocating would be in their best interest, because there was nothing stopping them from being in good schools with access to good opportunities where they already were, and where they already were was around their parents, both their parents. It was more complicated than that, and I've just remembered that there was like another third option, and that was actually going to give them more access to their extended family. So potentially that relocation could have been a good option, but That relocation wasn't. And I don't see from the court's previous decisions that they would have found in the father's favour if he took it to court. So, generally speaking, long story short, you need to be able to evidence to the court that what you're proposing to do is going to be in the best interest of your children. And it could be because of how much of an impact not moving has on you. But you need to be able to evidence that. So just saying that you'd be unhappy if you didn't get to move probably wouldn't be sufficient. But if you could show that that unhappiness was because of your mental health, lack of supports, probably other factors in the bigger picture, that unhappiness could factor into the children's best interest. Does that make sense? It may not make sense. If it doesn't make sense, let me know. But I think it does. Generally speaking, an unhappy parent is never going to be the best parent they possibly could be. But anyway, okay. I could keep going on forever, but I'm not going to keep going on forever because I want to move on to how you could potentially discuss it and resolve it with your co-parent. So when I'm talking about this, I'm assuming your co-parenting dynamic is one that you could speak with them directly, at least in the first instance, before going on to any other kind of options. But if you needed to jump to the ladder, you would jump to the ladder. So the first thing would be that you would put the proposal forward to the other parent. And I always think, let's not have problems, let's have solutions. No problems, only solutions. So you're not going to the parent with the problem. You're not going there going, oh my God, I think I'm going to move, but I don't know how to do it. Like, I don't know how you're still going to see your child. You're not going to do that. You're going to arm yourself with everything you possibly can. That we want to move. This is the plan. We plan to move. It's for this reason, and it's going to be a compelling reason. It's not just that I want to go to the Gold Coast because there's theme parks there and it's really fun. You're not doing that. You're going to the Gold Coast because you've got a job opportunity and the kids can go to a better school. I don't know, maybe. But you're going to go to the other parent with the why behind the move. And that could be that you have some kind of medical condition and there's a really good specialist on the Gold Coast, someone highly regarded, someone that's going to keep you healthy and well and functioning and best able to care for the kids. You're going to give them the solutions as to how they're going to still have their relationship with their children. So it could be that you can continue to facilitate the time that they already have. If that's the case, that's great. If you can't, or if you may not be able to down the track. So you might think that you can facilitate it. And this is something I did raise earlier in the week, was best intentions don't always work out. So you might think that you can facilitate something, but it turns out that practically it just doesn't work. The kids are getting too tired, they can't travel, there's too much traffic. So even if you are within sort of a commuting distance, it may not be practicable with the current orders as they exactly are, or the current arrangements. So you're going to that parent and saying, look, we're going to try and do this, and that's the plan. If plan A fails, this is plan B. So we've got these other options. And plan B, I know it's not going to be exactly what you want because that's not what we agreed to, but we know how important it is for the kids to continue having that meaningful relationship with you. So where you might lose time here, maybe you've got some give for time there. Maybe you've got some other avenues, like video calls are an easy thing nowadays, and they're more readily available, they're easily accessible, even for little kids on an iPad. So, but in saying that, you might have a little kid that doesn't have the attention span or focus to be doing video calls, and they run off every 5 seconds. So the other parent's probably going to know that, and you're going to need to work through that issue with them as well. So the best thing I can say is to just arm yourself with everything you can possibly give them that is the why behind your proposal and how you're going to make it work. So here's my why, here's my solutions. What do you think? And they're probably going to say it's rubbish and I don't want you to move and I want my kids here, because they love their kids and they want their kids to stay, and that makes sense. But you're giving them everything you can, and you can give them some time then to mull it over and consider it and come back to you. And if they don't come back in agreement because they have their why as well. Maybe you're going to go to mediation. Maybe you're going to go some kind of like co-parent counselling or coaching, whatever it is. You're going to go somewhere that's facilitated, where you're going to each come in with your why, each come in with your possible solutions. And with someone else there to help you, you're going to work through them and unpack everything and maybe reach a resolution, but you might not. But just having another person there to guide you and to really draw out everything can be really useful. So as long as you walk away from that with at least a little bit more than you walked in, you've still come out with something. So the very worst case scenario, if that doesn't work, is that you end up with a lawyer, and the lawyer's going to negotiate with the other person or the other person's lawyer. And the very worst case is that it ends up in court. And then we're going back to what I talked about before, and that's where you're going to need to be able to evidence how it's in your children's best interest. And that may be because the impact on you to not move is so detrimental and so impactful that it will harm the children in some way. Not harm, that's a terrible word to use because I come from child protection and harm is like a big thing. But it will affect them negatively, and it will take away from the children when you could move and give. I guess in really simplistic terms, you want the children to have more, not less. And it's weighing up whether they're going to have more by staying where they are or more by relocating, and being able to evidence that. And that's probably all I can tell you. It's going to come down to different scenarios for different people, and there's a whole lot of other variables that come into play, and I haven't even started on the safety side of things if there's domestic violence involved. Just basically come back to that same fundamental rule when you're looking at any kind of parenting issue, and that is what's in the children's best interests. And it's not that mummy or daddy are moving 7 hours away to be with some dude or lady off Tinder. Okay, that's not going to be in your kids' interest, probably ever, unless they own Disney World. I don't know. But just think, if you had to go to court and you had to provide that evidence, what would that evidence be? And start by giving that to the co-parent. And that's the start of your discussion. Here's the evidence, here's my why, and here's the idea of how it's all going to work. Okay, if you think I can help you, feel free to get in touch with me. You can comment on here probably. Otherwise, jpflm.com is my website, or you can call me on 0466 090 434 and we can talk more about relocation. And my dog did not get up. Well, she got up, but she just moved behind the chair, so you didn't have to see my broken dog. Have a fabulous weekend, and thank you.